Greg, you recently wrote a LinkedIn post, and in it, you wrote a line that stopped me, and I know a lot of people in their tracks. You said, XML is a tree, the world is not. What the heck did you mean by that?
Well, a tree is a mathematical object, and there are binary trees and there are trees that you can have more than two just branches, but it's well studied and well known. And XML is constructed on that mathematical model. In building relationships, everything in a tree is parent-child, but not all relationships that count in business, to say nothing of real estate finance, not all relationships are of that type. So we needed to, the architects of MISMO version 3 standard needed a way to represent relationships that can't be represented as a tree.
Love it.
If you were stuck with a tree, you'd have to decide whether the person owns the loan or the loan owns the person.
Yep.
Without the tree, we can connect the person in the loan with a line and label that line, say, is a borrower on or is obliged to, so that we have more clear semantics about the relationship between the individual and the loan.
Folks, buckle up. We're in for a education here. Folks, we have Greg Alvord. Greg is the founder and owner of Dynamic Knowledge Growth Associates. But Greg's also one of the longest tenured MISMO experts. By my accounts, Greg, you've been in and around MISMO for over 2 decades. Um,
Yes.
and a few years ago, your firm, Dynamic Knowledge Growth Associates, formally joined MISMO as a member. Let's start with why MISMO matters so much for you and why you've decided to stick around it for over 2 decades.
For one thing, I have learned a ton. I have learned so much about the intricacies of every aspect of real estate finance, from appraisers to servicers to every aspect of it. And it's just been fascinating for me to hear from these subject matter experts and try to incorporate their thinking about their business into a data model that will serve them. There were people in the beginning of the version 3 adventure, and I have a little story about that later, that said we could not have a data model that served both origination and servicing, that it wouldn't work, but it does. And the path of data from the application through the closing and onto the servicing platform, the stuff that didn't change at each step along the way is the same and represented in the same way. But prior to that, each one of those stages had their own form and called things differently. It was a horror show.
Yeah.
So the day that I proposed a version 3 architecture to the MISMO committee was an interesting day. September 10th, 2001.
Oh boy. Yeah. Very interesting day.
And the next morning, the world was different. And many of the people who were at the meeting on Monday, people from Fannie and Freddie, drove all the way from Orange County, California, back home to Washington, D.C. the then leader of MISMO, Gabe Minton, was on an airplane. He had a choice of flights out of Dulles, and he decided he needed the United points more than the American points.
Hmm.
They left from adjacent gates. His landed to when they pushed all of the airplanes out of the sky. He ended up in, I think, Garden City, Kansas.
Hmm.
Had he been taken the other flight that was next to it, he would have been in a field in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
So it was quite a it impacted MISMO at its core
Sure.
and at its community level. So it was quite an event, but clearly nobody paid any attention to the idea of having
Oh yeah.
version 3 architecture. But
Little bit of
it was,
distraction. But it's so interesting from the timing perspective, because you think back, you know, I've been in this role now for 4 months, and I've talked quite a bit about the 26 years of MISMO, right? And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on this podcast is, as I go around and talk to people in the industry, there's like a surface level understanding of MISMO, right? And and mostly people can say, oh yeah, the uniform residential loan application, that's MISMO, right? And it's one of 200 or so artifacts that have been created and have been, are in some form of maintenance for the last 2+ decades. I want to go back and kind of go back as far as we can here, because we're gonna hopefully teach a little bit about the history of MISMO. You credit the MISMO's early architects for recognizing um, the mismatch between um, I guess you had what you described as the hierarchical relationship between data, and you credited those architects with recognizing the mismatch and then pushing the XML and XXD to their limits. Why was that such a critical design choice then? And what does that decision back then mean today as we continue to evolve and build?
well, as I mentioned, if you didn't have some other way to do it, you'd have to make a choice in a hierarchical fashion. Does the person own the loan, or does the loan own the person?
Yep.
And you'd have a very difficult time with a loan that had more than one borrower, which
Most of them
most
do.
have two.
Yeah.
So it was clear there was no way using just a tree to be able to represent the data the way that it is operationally flows in real estate finance.
Yeah.
So we came up with this idea of connecting points in the tree. We basically stole an idea that was published by the W3C, people who gave us HTML and gave us HTTP and all of those standards. One of the standards that they published about that same time was called RDF, a relational definition format. And it was very clever. It's a simple English sentence with a subject, a predicate, and an object of the predicate. So for those of you who hated diagramming sentences in English, now you're going to see that actually comes back and bites you.
Mm, mm, mm.
So this idea of being able to connect things for a purpose, and that's what that predicate in the middle does. So we stole that idea and used another W3C standard called XLink that let us connect two different places in the model, in the tree. So we could have two borrowers connected to the loan
And a
and
property.
a property, and we could have different kinds of connectors between people. We could have people who were owners of the property but not on the obligation.
Yep.
All the different kinds of relationships that exist between people and property and loans, we could connect them with this X-link thing and label that line that connects them for the different purposes. And that was an idea that came from the RDF standard, was made possible by the X-link standard, and we used that extensively in the version 3 architecture. And being able to step, just as in, yeah, this is the way in which we got away from just the tree structure that XML has and make relationships that matter from a business perspective.
So
What I'm,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, no, go. Please go.
What I'm working on now, what dynamic ontology means to me, is taking it to the next level and providing all the relationships that exist between the concepts that are in the MISMO model. Connect everything that needs to be connected and establish the formal name of the term is an ontology. Now, at our recent MISMO meeting, every other sentence had the phrase AI in it.
Yeah.
There's two ways to get data into an AI system. You can go out and look at all the things that have happened in the past and say, oh, well, that's a pretty probable thing to do. Let's make that relationship. Or you can use the formal ontology of a problem domain, like the one we're building for MISMO, and give it that so that AI can make calculations based upon the relationships that are in that ontology. So a way to be able to bring the concepts of real estate finance into the AI world is through this retranscription of the MISMO model into an ontology.
So, Greg, this is one of the reasons I really wanted to have this conversation, because one of the things that I thought a lot about as I was coming into this role was the role of MISMO for the housing finance industry over the next 5 years or next decade as we accelerate the journey, in AI, whatever that looks like. And it struck me that for the housing finance industry, imagine how far behind we would be if not for what's been done already in the standards building process. I'd just love for you to comment on that. And really, what I want the audience to recognize is that the work that's been happening for 2+ decades has been building up to this moment in time where we're now, going to transition into this next phase of the industry and the next phase of computing, the next phase of life that's going to be AI powered. I would love your perspective on the work done to date to get the mortgage industry ready for this AI revolution.
Well, it's more than it wasn't built in order to be ready for AI, but it was built to be ready for the business that we've been doing.
Right.
And it's built to establish to identify and make calculable the relationships between all the moving parts that happen in a real estate finance transaction. And in the work that goes into empowering that transaction. You need a credit report. You need an appraisal. You need all different kinds of verifications on the risk associated with both the property and the people that are involved in it. all of that is laid out. We have one and only one structure in the data model for people's names.
Yeah.
Any place there is a name, it has the same definitions, it has the same field names, and you can take the exact same piece of XML in the case of it running now, and you can plant it in the exact same thing in every transaction that goes on that needs the borrower's name or the appraiser's name or whatever. So we have pre-established the relationships that exist in the business of real estate finance. That makes us absolutely ready to re-represent those relationships and hand them off to AI to do with it what it needs, whatever
Yeah.
that happens to be. I don't know. I can't predict where that's going to go, but I can tell you that we want the decisions of an AI system that's related to real estate finance to be auditable and verifiable and based upon the derivation of from the data, calculation from the data, not based upon some statistical count of the number of things that happened out in the universe, right?
Right.
So there are two ways you can feed data into an AI system: the statistics of what happened, or the relationships in the problem domain you're looking at. And it's going to be much better for us to use that last method.
Yeah, I just think it's so important for the entire industry to recognize the how we got to where we are today as everyone's focused on AI. You hit it on the head. There wasn't a single session, on the main stage at Summit where AI wasn't part of the conversation. There, in many of the work groups that I popped into throughout the course of the week, inevitably AI was part of the conversation. You talked earlier. You said the term ontology earlier.
Sorry.
I'm gonna ask you to double click on that for a moment, maybe define the term ontology, and then I have a follow-up question on that.
The formal definition of ontology is the study of meaning. I mean, things that end in ology are study of something. So an ontology is the science of meaning. The W3C standard gives us a way to represent meaning. And the next bit of work for MISMO, in my opinion, is to take what we understand about the meaningful things we have in the data model and those relationships and transcribe that into the representation, the W3C representation of meaning, which makes it an ontology.
Got it. So pivoting now to this question, this will get us towards our tail end of our conversation. So is it fair to say MISMO already provides much of the semantic backbone, domain-specific AI needs, right? Even if it wasn't labeled that way originally?
Correct. Because we've been able to establish what the relationships are and what the exchanges of data are in the real estate finance industry, so that if you looked at from first contact with borrower to the end of the 30-year loan, the number of times the MISMO model is used is amazing.
Yeah.
We've already harvested, we already have, one of the, I'll take a little sidestep here.
Yeah.
The complaint that people have about the expense of building an AI system is you need to capture the input of subject matter experts in order to make good decisions about how your AI system's going to work. My thesis is We've done that already. We have 20 years of subject matter experts contributing to the relationships of the data and the transactions that go on in the real estate finance. And all we're going to do is transcribe it
Hmm.
into a format that AI can understand.
Right. Love that. All right. This is our call to the industry, if you will, the wrap up here, Greg. If
Okay.
lenders, vendors, GSEs, and regulators take one lesson from our short conversation today, and I'm not asking you to condense your 20 plus years of MISMO expertise into a single call to action, but I kind of am. What would be that lesson that you would want the audience to take from today's conversation?
Keep doing what you've been doing. Keep participating in MISMO because we're going to be the bridge from what you have now to whatever you end up with in AI. We have the background, the data, the relationships, and the methodology for making what has happened over the past 20 plus years into something that AI could accept.
I love it. So I,
And in engaging with MISMO and watching that process and being critical of it when it needs to be is all going to be part of it. Keep your participation in MISMO going so that we can make this bridge between what we do and what we want AI to help us do.
I wrote a note before we talked, and I wrote AI moves fast, meaning keeps it aligned. Um, this is why MISMO depends on long-term contributors like you, Greg. Thank you for showing up recently at the summit. I appreciate that. It's been great to get to know you. And more importantly, thank you for, again, your decades of commitment to this mission called MISMO. We appreciate you.
And I've had a good time doing it. So thank you very much.
Win-win. All right, folks. That was one of our MISMO history lessons with Greg Alvord. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Please join us next week for the next episode of MISMO Mic'd Up. See y'all.